Everybody, welcome. I'm Michael Quirke, and today I want to talk with you about your body and CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and how you can recognize the somatic symptoms, which are an important feature of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, in order to understand complex PTSD, somatic symptoms, let's first begin by taking a step back. And you probably, or you may already know, you might have some awareness that post traumatic stress disorder and what it is. But there is an important variation on this all too common condition, and it's called complex post traumatic stress disorder. While PTSD is triggered by enduring or witnessing a life-threatening traumatic event, complex post-traumatic stress disorder is caused by living through ongoing or repeated trauma. So this might include any kind of sustained abuse, physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. Many of the men and women in my practice that I work with, they had what I call a pretty rough start early in life. They grew up with a combination of sometimes physical and emotional neglect and physical and emotional abuse. Now, the CPTSD syndrome can be a result of much more extreme conditions too, like living in a war zone or enduring human trafficking or slavery, organized abuse, kidnapping, and long-term domestic violence. Some of the symptoms are kind of similar to those of PTSD, but there are important differences that exist. And one of them is that CPTSD often causes somatic symptoms. And I'm not going to go into it in this video in depth, but the main reason for that is because the rates of dissociation, or what we could call disconnection, that happens on a neurological level, they are much, much, much higher in those with that have complex post-traumatic stress disorder than they are in people who have what we refer to as single incident traumas. So car accidents, natural disasters, things like that. And one of the main reasons for that is because it's very, very common that a person with complex post-traumatic stress disorder had a lot of their trauma occur early in their life while their brain and young bodies were developing. Common CPTSD symptoms are things like difficulty regulating emotions. And CPTSD can create intense emotions and subsequently a very real challenge in regulating them. And what I see in the clients that I work with is often they have a history of really struggling with anger and intense fear. Dysfunctional emotional regulation may result in things like sudden outbursts or suddenly checking out with numbing or withdrawal or dissociation. Neither extreme seems to be in the person's control. Another key sign is that the person loses their ability to feel safe or to trust other people. Now, quite understandably, repeated abuse spawns hypervigilance, the sense of always being on the lookout for danger. You don't trust other people, and you also lose faith in institutions and their loyalty to you and their ability and their willingness to take care of you. To you, the world and everything in it is basically threatening. It's filled with dangerous people. You deem it necessary to always keep your guard up. And this is one of the complex PTSD somatic symptoms that can feel kind of like your body is betraying you. That's how many of my clients have described it. So, for example, quite a few of the men and the women that I've worked with have shared with me that on some level, their intellectual brain, their rational mind knew that their partner was indeed a safe person, but their body still responded with fear or overwhelming shame or anger. Running parallel to this trend is a perpetual search for somebody to rescue or guard you or take care of you. Helplessness and shame are really important factors when it comes to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. That's because the child in you feels betrayed and neglected. And if the trauma pertained to sexual abuse, shame tends to be a major factor. Your self-esteem has been shattered, and you might try to convince yourself that you even deserved the horrific treatment that you endured. Another factor that is often one that causes great suffering is that you feel that nobody actually understands you or your experiences. Now, when you combine this with a loss of trust, this is a very lonely place to live. And left unchecked, such persistent sadness can escalate into self-harm activities or suicidal thoughts or gestures. It's very common that people with CPTSD, in fact, it's more than common, it's been the norm with every single person I've worked with, is that they suffer from flashbacks. Often they don't even know they're having flashbacks because it's not like in the movies where suddenly you're transported into the past. Often they're body flashbacks and they're triggers that my clients get caught up in, and they don't even recognize that they're triggered because it just seems real to them. They really feel like they're in danger. Flashbacks suddenly transport you against your will back to the felt sense of the abusive events. Visual and emotional flashbacks are common for almost everybody with CPTSD and PTSD. But what's important here is the intensity and the frequency and the impact of the CPTSD flashbacks and how they show up in our bodies. So, what are complex PTSD somatic symptoms? To help clarify this term, let's just start by considering the word soma, which means body. From there, it naturally follows that somatic symptoms are physical sensations, impulses, and urges. These are types of symptoms that are common with trauma survivors, particularly when they're recalling the past or dealing with flashbacks. At first, these signs might not appear connected to your CPTSD. And so it's highly recommended that you get an assessment and that you work with a trauma treatment professional. This isn't self-help work. And people do get better, but to do that, they need to work with a trauma professional that knows their way around treating CPTSD. And frankly, that is not everybody. Somatic symptoms of CPTSD include things like nausea and other digestive issues. And just to give you an extent of, a sense of how common that is, I would say that not everybody, but almost every single man and woman in my practice suffers with chronic digestive problems, things like IBS, that are pretty severe and pretty disruptive to their lives. Um, There are quite a few people, and this is a very common indicator of CPTSD, uh, extreme pain that's mysterious, it's psychogenic. Um, Doctors cannot find an organic or medical or functional cause to the pain. Frequently, people have things like palpitations or shaking and tremors or a chronic fatigue, a sense of long term exhaustion that they just can't seem to kick. Here's another hallmark of CPTSD, it's insomnia and sleep disruption. A specific and unique somatic symptom amongst trauma survivors is what I call body hypervigilance. Some people think of it as a kind of muscle armoring, and it's basically a kind of constant tensing of your muscles. It's as if you are bracing yourself for more abuse or more trauma. And quite a few of the men and the women that I work with talk about always feeling like they're braced. These overworked muscles grow exhausted over time and will frequently lead to chronic pain syndromes, chronic tightness, and all sorts of difficulties with movement. So we've talked a little bit about the CPTSD somatic flashbacks, and a typical flashback can re-trigger the emotions that you felt originally when you were experiencing the traumatic condition. A somatic flashback causes you to physically re-experience the trauma. Now, this could be pain, discomfort, or sensations or impulses. It depends a lot on the kind of experience that you've endured. In the case of sexual trauma, somatic flashbacks will usually bring with them feelings of guilt, shame, or even disgust around physical intimacy. But here's the takeaway message that I want to leave you with. Please don't just suffer silently with complex PTSD somatic symptoms. You do not have to do that. You can reach out and you can find qualified help today. It's out there. It takes a little bit of looking to try to find it, because the reality is most clinicians have no experience treating complex post-traumatic stress disorder. They don't have the training, and they don't know their way around it. Obviously, we've been talking about a very serious topic, and I'm going to say it again. It's key that you get qualified professional support. That's how you're going to recover from this. If you have CPTSD, then what's happening is you have a broad range of emotions that are cascading and colliding. And what's probably happening too is that you are very adept at disconnecting and distracting yourself from those feelings too. Trying to make sense of this on your own can actually exacerbate the issues. I've worked with many complex trauma survivors, and I've got the experience to tell you with absolute confidence that people do get better all the time. It just requires the right plan and the right kind of treatment. Now, if you found this video helpful, and I hope that you did, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. I also want to invite you to learn more about CPTSD. You can do that by visiting my website. It's www.michaelgquirke.com. The URL, the address is also in the nearby description. If you go there, you're going to find hundreds of articles and videos, and a ton of them are on CPTSD because it is a special interest of mine. I hope you have a good day, and I want to thank you for watching. Take care.